Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has hit theaters, making this the final installment to the nearly 30-year-old franchise, which means it's time to rank all the movies in the series from worst to best.
One last time.
Before I hop into the ranking, keep in mind this is just my opinion. Let me know your ranking in the comments section down below, and without any further ado, let's hop right into it. Easily coming in last place is Mission Impossible 2, and this is a film that actually got reworked in the editing process quite a bit, and you can kind of tell because the first act here is actually very slow and there's not too much action in it. It focuses way too much on this love story that just feels so forced. Now, the second half of this movie is actually much more watchable. You get a lot more cool action, and I do think the director for this movie had a really good style, something unique, but still, on a story level, this movie is just very underwhelming. It involves these former IMF agents trying to release a disease into the world, and you would think that would be pretty compelling, but just the execution was not there. It's very hard to remember what the villain's motives even were. Now, I will say, for being last place, I would still probably give this a 5 or 6 out of 10. It's not like the worst movie of all time, but it's also not great either. Coming in at number 7 is Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. And just so we're clear, this is a huge jump up in quality, and all the movies from here on out I thoroughly enjoy. I think we get quite a bit of fun action in this movie. The characters are definitely great, and I like how it deals with the consequences of destruction and that kind of stuff from previous movies and the CIA wanting to shut the IMF down. But I just feel like when it comes to this movie in particular, the villain it introduces and then the new love interest, those two characters don't really become too interesting until the later movies that they're in. And when it comes to the first 4 Mission Impossible movies, those all had different directors and different styles, and then the next 4 were all the same director. And the director for the recent ones definitely did a great job of connecting all these different movies. However, stylistically, when it comes to the action and that kind of stuff, it does feel very similar. So this is just a movie that I feel like is in between Ghost Protocol and Fallout, and it doesn't have any of the super memorable action sequences. But don't get me wrong, it's still very well made. It's a very solid movie. Coming in at number 6 is the original from 1996. And this movie is completely different from all the other ones on this list because the budget definitely wasn't as big, although it still wasn't small for the time. But the thing is, so many of the modern films are just trying to be larger in scale, have bigger set pieces, and that's not really what this movie goes for. It's just more of a spy thriller where you're invested in these characters and there's a lot of tension, especially with the CIA vault break-in scene. That was just really well done. Now, when it comes to the story, it's not anything too crazy. It's pretty straightforward. And then the villain was also one of the more memorable ones, but also not anything too great. And the villain here was actually a character from the TV series. And so they made it a plot twist to where, oh, he's actually the villain, which is actually a little bit disrespectful to the TV series. And I also feel like this movie tried a little bit hard to have as many plot twists as possible. And it gets to a point where not any of them are even surprising.
I was not expecting that. But I was expecting not to expect something, so it doesn't count.
Still though, this is a very enjoyable movie. It's very stylistically different from the others on this list, and that's what I appreciate about it. Coming in at number 5 is Ghost Protocol, and this is one of the funnest films on this list. You just get a lot of great action throughout. The dynamic between the team members here is a lot of fun. We get to see some new technology that they use as they're sneaking around in this one place. And of course, the standout sequence is the Dubai Tower sequence, one of the greatest sequences in the whole franchise, maybe even the best. Now, I will say though, in between that sequence and then the car garage scene at the very end, there's not really anything too memorable in between there. Just the whole chunk of the movie there is kind of forgettable. Not to mention, this might have the most forgettable villains. Not necessarily the worst, but just not the most memorable. Still though, as I've been saying with all these movies except for the second one, this is a great franchise. It's hard to compare great movies with other great movies. Coming in at number 4 is Mission Impossible: Fallout, and this is a movie that is very consistent from beginning to end. There's a lot of great action, and it definitely really starts to focus on the character of Ethan Hunt and how he doesn't want to sacrifice any of his team members, something that they carry on in the later movies. Plus, you have Henry Cavill in here as the villain, and I think he just did a phenomenal job. He's one of the most unique and memorable ones in the series, and I especially like how this kind of continues the story of Rogue Nation where characters from that appear again, and even Ethan Hunt's ex-wife from the third movie who also made a cameo in the fourth movie, they kind of had her in the third act of this, and so it was just nice seeing those pieces connect to each other while also the story still being pretty straightforward. Coming in at number 3 is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, and this is another one that I thought from beginning to end, it's very consistent. There is sort of a dark vibe to it at times, but there's also some fun to be had here and there. This has some of the most impressive stunts, like with the dirt bike and the train sequence. And this also introduces some new characters that are pretty compelling. And so there's just so much stuff this movie's able to do without ever feeling too slow paced despite being 2.5 hours. It's just very exciting the whole time. And as I said, it sets up future stuff, but it also connects to stuff from the past. Coming in at number 2 is Mission Impossible 3. This is easily the most underrated film in this series in my opinion, because this is the first and really only film where it actually dives into Ethan Hunt's personal life. And also, so many of these movies feel like they need to be bigger to be better, and this movie actually has pretty small stakes, but they're personal, where Ethan wants to protect his wife. And just throughout this movie, it still has all the action and all that great stuff you would want from this franchise, and it just feels like it has the right balance of darkness and fun that you want from these movies. Not to mention, this easily has the best villain in the entire franchise by a landslide.
I could help you. The way you helped me on the airplane.
And so this is easily just a movie that I think is way too overlooked. But coming in at number 1 is the newest one, The Final Reckoning. And I always hate to put the newest one in first place because there's some recency bias, but I think just because this was the last one in the series, it was easily the most heavy on emotion. A lot of people have actually been complaining that the first act was too slow. I did not find that to be the case. I thought it was still very compelling and there was some tension. But of course, it definitely does get crazier in the second and third act, where the stunts are just bigger than ever. You have the whole submarine sequence, which is just insanely good. And then towards the end, you have the airplane sequence as well. It's just crazy how much of this they were able to do practically. And as the conclusion to this franchise, it just felt super satisfying. So overall, that was my ranking of the Mission Impossible franchise. Let me know in the comments how you would rank these movies. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.